Once again, a Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Oh, okay, great. Thank you. So this beginning of this week, we moved into the month of Elul on the Jewish calendar, the month before Rosh Hashanah. So I thought I would switch gears on you a little bit, rather than taking a Torah view of world events. We'd switch a little bit into the season of repentance, not only physically, but spiritually, psychologically, a time when we traditionally prepare for the high holidays, and that means a lot more than figuring out menus for the Yom Tov meals and who we're going to invite, since we're restricted with how many we can have, so we have to work these things out very carefully. The rabbis advise us to set aside some time each day in this month for what is called Cheshbon HaNefesh, literally an accounting of the soul, for taking stock, for reflecting on the past year and looking for things that we need to fix. Now, most of us are familiar with Maimonides, with Rambam's famous model for doing teshuvah, for doing repentance. Repentance and the Day of Atonement alone only suffice for sins between man and God. For example, not keeping Shabbat, violating or not keeping kosher. But for sins between people, Rambam explains that one is never absolved of sins against another person unless you have made restitution. Unless you've fixed the damage and received forgiveness from the other person. After you've done all that, the tradition teaches God will forgive you. But the question I want to sort of look with you into today is, does Maimonides' model for repentance really go far enough? It's all focused on damage control. Find the places where you messed up, take corrective action, and fix the damage. Boom, we're good. There's a lot of problems with this model of repentance. For one thing, what's the most common way we hurt other people? For most of us, we don't physically hurt somebody else. We don't steal from them. We don't injure them. We don't take away something from them. For most of us, and by far our greatest hurts to others, come through saying hurtful things, for violating a trust. How can we make restitution for gossiping about somebody or saying something that's hurtful, using words that insult? It's impossible to take words back that are spoken. The damage is done. It really can never be fixed. The injured party may choose to forgive anyway, but there really isn't a way to undo the damage of harsh words. This week's Torah portion, Parshat Shoftim, begins, "You shall appoint judges and enforcing officers for your tribes in all of the gates that your Lord, your God, is giving you. And they shall govern the people with true justice." And then you have the famous line, Zedek, Zedek, Tirodoth, justice, justice you shall pursue. Rabbi Yoshua Horovitz, the Shaare HaKodesh, 16th century rabbi, said that the gates that the Torah refers to are the 7 orifices in our head: 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, and the mouth. The judges and officers mean that we are to police what goes in and out of those orifices, to guard against hearing evil, hearing gossip, or speaking lashon hara, or otherwise acting inappropriately. And what Shaare HaKodesh is teaching us is that damage control isn't enough. Rambam doesn't go far enough. We need what we call preventative measures. We need to address the root cause of sin. And what is the root cause? In most cases, the root cause, I would say, is some form of character flaw. A person who cheats, either on his taxes or in other ways, adulterous ways, and some kind of dishonesty in business, maybe doing those things because they're greedy. Someone who loves to gossip about other people may have low esteem and is looking to build themselves up by tearing others down. Someone who says hurtful words to others may have a problem with anger management. You know, the Mussar masters, the teachers of the Jewish ethical tradition, a movement that started in Europe in the 19th century, teaches us that we need to go way beyond damage control if we're really going to do teshuvah. Otherwise, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is really a waste of time. We need to work on improving our midot, our personality traits. The only problem is, as pointed out by Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, known as the father of the Mussar movement, it's easier to learn the entire Talmud, 5,422 pages of dense Aramaic discussions and arguments and homilies, than it is to change one character trait. Great idea to focus on improving our character, but how do we do it? There is a joke that explains the starting point. And it says, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is only one. But the light bulb has to want to change. So in other words, the first step in wanting to change is to recognize that there is something that needs changing. You know, one of the features of the human nature is that we're often very good at finding flaws in other people, but our own flaws are invisible to ourselves. There's a Yiddish expression, and you have to excuse me, my Yiddish is not really that good, that says we're very, very good at seeing the fly on the back of another, but not seeing the elephant on our own shoulders. Even people with low self-esteem who regularly beat themselves up for various flaws, real and imagined, may not correctly identify which flaws are really worth fixing and which flaws are not important and you should just really walk away from. The Mussar masters teach us that a good starting point is to keep a journal of your interactions with other people. Every day, at the end of the day, take a few minutes, write down observations about your interactions with others throughout the day, and of course, after a while, you have to look at it. Did you get angry? Did you gossip? Did you dominate a conversation? Did you turn your eyes away when somebody was actually talking to you? Perhaps a beggar on the street, you couldn't look at him in the eye, even when he was reaching out to you. Did you lie about your age to get a senior discount that you're not entitled to? Did you spend 20 minutes looking for something because you're disorganized? And after a few weeks, the Mussar masters tell us, you'll start to see patterns emerge. And maybe what you need to work on is being more generous, or controlling your anger, or being more humble, or being more organized. We're all unique. And we all have different things that we need to work on. You know, there are various techniques that can be used to work on your midot. But the most important and the most common denominator is simply just paying attention. There's an interesting effect. Some of you may have heard of it. It's known as the Hawthorne effect. It was named after a Western Electric factory in Illinois. And it was discovered, it was named after them because that's where it was discovered in the 1920s. And researchers were looking into various ways to improve productivity in the factory. And they found that when they turned the lights up, productivity went up. And then when they turned the lights down, they discovered that productivity went up, not down. The inevitable conclusion was that simply the process of paying attention to the people made their productivity go up. Just paying attention. Similarly, by paying attention to a particular personal trait, we all become more tuned into it. Now, one technique involves journaling about just that personality trait that you're going to work on. Don't try and work on all of your traits because you will not succeed. If you decide, for instance, that anger management is what you need to work on, journal about that every time that you get angry during the day. And knowing that you are paying attention to that trait alone, just knowing that you're paying attention to it, can help you be aware before you even engage in the undesirable behavior that leads up to the anger. And they also, of course, recommend meditating or thinking about particular traits that you're working on at the beginning of every day. It's another way to increase your consciousness about who you are and how you respond to certain things. It's also important to note that it's easy to get burned out. It's easy to become accustomed to things. And so what the Mussar teachers went on to teach, they recommended only working on one particular trait for a week, and then put that aside and work on something else for another week, and then sort of rotate different characteristics to work on. If you're interested in taking your high holiday preparations to this next level, there are very many good books on Mussar which is available. One of them I would recommend is Alan Marinis. You may have heard of him. He's a Canadian from Vancouver. And he wrote a book called Everyday Holiness, The Jewish Spiritual Path of Mussar, as an introduction for those who are interested in Mussar. The depth of the feeling of starting a new year with a clean slate that we all hope to achieve on Yom Kippur is directly proportional to the effort that we put into preparing for that awesome and holy day. Efforts that start now during the month of Elul. And my prayer for you, and more importantly for me, is that may the Kadosh Baruch Hu strengthen all of us in the efforts to right any wrongs and our efforts to live up to our own ideals for ourselves. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.